go out and sign D'Onta Foreman, who was a running back last year for the Bears. I, of course, know him as a man who cost me from winning $800 last year on a parlay, so I'm a big fan of Foreman. No, I'm just kidding. But in all honesty, like, Nick Chubb is hurt. Nick Chubb is dealing with essentially trying to get his knee back working. And last year, the running back situation was not great. Jerome Ford was fine. He had his moments where he looked really, really good. And then he had some moments where he looked rough. And, Kareem Hunt is back half of his career. He was really great in short yardage. But is he a guy you're going to want to rely on? Probably not. And Chubb's probably going to miss a couple games. He's not going to come back immediately and be Nick Chubb that we know, right? If he is, that would be insane. But in all honesty, probably not going to have him for the first couple games. So what did the Browns do this offseason? They go out and they sign Nyheim Hines to likely be your special teams guy. I know we brought back Prochet, but I don't know that he's going to be here. I'm not counting on that. But Nyheim Hines is going to be your third down out of the backfield type running back. And now the Browns go out and they sign D'Onta Foreman real fast. I think he's a good player. I think he's a little bit underrated. I like what he does. I think he's a bruiser. He's more of your Chubb type of running back to kind of fit that need for the offense. Whereas Jerome Ford, a little bit of both. Nyheim Hines, pretty much just a receiving back. So it makes a ton of sense. He's a bruiser. And then just to give you some quick examples here, 2022, he had 203 rushing attempts, 914 yards, 5 touchdowns. Last year with the Bears, 109 attempts, 425 yards, 4 touchdowns. So you get D'Onta Foreman behind a good offensive line. If you need to rely on him and kind of rotate your backs currently that you have, I think that's a good plan. Last thing I'll say on this, the only bad thing about it is I would have preferred to draft a running back this year, and I just don't see that happening now unless there's a situation where somebody they thought wasn't going to be there is there, and they can't pass it up. But nevertheless, currently the Browns running back room, game 1 next year, probably going to be D'Onta Foreman and or Jerome Ford starting with Nyheim Hines there. Tristan, kind of caught me off guard, but at the same time, we needed it, so makes a ton of sense. What did you think of the signing of D'Onta Foreman?
Yeah, I thought it made a lot of sense. When Chubb went down last year, it was clear that we struggled to find a guy that was capable of filling in that role. Jerome Ford, like you said, had his moments. He had glimpses, but really it was only that. It was just glimpses. And, I think that, there are people out there that are saying, like, the signing doesn't mean it's over for Ford, and I don't think that it means that either. But I do think it means that Jerome Ford should be worried. And here's what I mean by that. Nyheim Hines, he was hurt last year, right? And obviously he brings something to the return game that is interesting and exciting. But for me, I look at Jerome Ford and I say, right, so you're not necessarily the best with as far as like a pure runner of the football. You're not breaking tackles, you're not juking guys out of their cleats, receiving the ball, I think he's solid. I think he's a good option. But at the same time, Nyheim Hines can do that too. And he has an element that he can participate in the return game. And not only that, but also if you were to look at it and say, right, well, what if Nyheim Hines gets injured? I mean, Demetric Felton's still on our practice squad, and I've always had a soft spot for him. I think he's a solid back, especially as a receiving threat. I think he'd be fine to fill that role. So, I don't think that Jerome Ford has as much of a carved out role in this team as some people do think. And this is coming from a guy that's been high on Jerome Ford. I've been saying quite regularly, like, hey, this guy is super, super talented. Don't forget, he came out of Bama, is something I've said a lot.
Yeah.
But again, I tie this into the signing of Tyler Huntley. This is an all-in move. No excuses. You signed Foreman so that way if Chubb went out, you had a guy that could play the Chubb role,
Yep.
right? And even a guy that, like, hey, listen, Chubb's going to be working himself back into this team, right? Coming off of a very bad injury. Even though it's not as bad as it could have been, it's still very bad. You know, you need a guy that can take some carries off of him while that's happening. And Foreman, I think, is the guy. I think that he's absolutely cut out to fill that role. And I think he could have a lot of success here this year in Cleveland. Very, very excited about him as a player. His talent, I think that the way he runs with the football, I think it's going to suit itself well here in Cleveland. And, you know, as a guy that can rotate in, I think that this is a hell of a pickup. I'm very excited about it. And I'm glad that the Browns didn't have to overpay to find their guy, because we talked about Swift, who went to the Bears, got way overpaid. You know, even though he's got a lot of potential, good back, too much money. And they found a guy that fit, and they got him at a decent value. So I can't be upset with it.
Yeah.
But, you know, what I'll go back to is this. Like, again, if we end up cutting Jerome Ford, like, I'm not going to be happy about it. You know, and I'm going to be upset a little, right? Similar to DTR, because the potential's there. But this is an all-in year. No excuses. So this is another move that, like, just doubles downs on it. Doubles down on it. Yeah, there we go. I got it eventually. All right.
There you go. You figured it out.
Exactly. But yeah, so yeah, I gotta say, Jerome Ford, he's gotta have a good game. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I believe in Jerome Ford. I think he is a talented running back. I think early on in his career, he has massively struggled with vision. That is beyond his biggest problem. Like, he doesn't see the cutback lanes. You know, he's improved. He has. There was times early on in the season, especially sitting up there with Michael Cozy, and we're both looking at each other going, how in the world did he miss that hole? Like, it was there. And you know he's thinking the same thing. Like, he wants to succeed. And I still believe he has talent. I think he'll be around. I don't think he gets cut personally. Will I be very upset if he is? No. But at the same time, reality of life is we're starting to look at a possibility of not having Nick Chubb at some point within the next couple years, maybe. And, you know, time flies. Chubb was drafted in 2018. It's been a long time. So, yeah. We love him. He's forever a Cleveland Brown, but
For sure.
the NFL's business. So, for this year, this is a move to, like you said, secure up the running back room, you know, easing Chubb back into things. But, you know, at the same time, what if Jerome Ford is replaced by a Blake Corum, a Brooks, you know, Allen? Like, what if we do end up picking one of these guys? Now, personally, I will throw this out here and then we'll move on because we've been going on an hour already, but I do like next year's running back class a lot better. This class is not that great, so maybe it might make sense to go get somebody next year. But you know what? Hey, if the Browns do go get somebody, I'm not going to be mad at it. You know, I think there are guys, but yeah.
And not only that, but you also have more draft capital available to you. And I think this year they're going to prioritize guard. I really do. I'm going to double down on that because you got two up there in age guards that are at high cap hits. It's a risk moving forward. So
guard and maybe tackle. I think it's more likely they go tackle with their first round pick next year.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
that makes a lot of sense, but I wouldn't be surprised if they go offensive guard.
Yeah.
There's a couple positions.
You're right, but here's the thing: I could absolutely see them. I'm gonna call it right now. Next year, they're gonna go offensive tackle with their first pick, right in the first round if they keep it. Let's say that, and then the second round pick they use on a running back.
Yeah, and there are plenty of guys. I've been sitting here the whole time. I've been thinking about this. Trevion's for sure going to be in the draft next year. Trevion Henderson out of Ohio State. But we got the transfer in from Ole Miss, Quinshon Judkins. That's a guy I want in Cleveland. Like, I love Trevion. I do. But give me Judkins in Cleveland. I think he's Dalvin Cook 2.0. I mean, I really do. But nevertheless, regardless, and there's multiple others too. Hold on. What is his name? Running back out of Oklahoma State. Y'all know who I'm talking about. He's a monster. Ollie Gordon? Is that right? I don't know. Anyway.
Sure.
Whatever. Regardless.
I'm not I'm not like Todd McShay you, like knowing next year, like not even the current draft running back class, the following year running back draft class. That's insane.
Regardless, running back, I think even though we have guys in the room, I still think it remains open. That's my point. But speaking of remaining open,